Hello again, this is Steve Cochran, and welcome to Live from My Office, episode number 152. It occurs to me that when we came back from our break for this fourth season, on the last episode, I didn't really explain where I had been, but I took about a month off to focus on two other projects I got asked to be involved in. One may be revealed here soon. The other's more on the backside, the offstage business side. But both kept me very busy. So that's why I was gone. I appreciate you sticking around and coming back. So thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks, of course, to David Hochberg and Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Here's a guy who started in the mortgage business in 2000. 21 years later, he's helped originate over $15 billion with a B dollars in loans to people and help folks in my family and probably your family as well. I should mention he hosts his own top-rated radio show. It's called Home Sweet Home Chicago, and it's on WGN, a place I used to work. I don't know if you're familiar with that. 10 a.m. every Saturday on WGN. I hope you give that a listen because he's got all sorts of home experts in there as well. But David, as always, thank you for your support. All right, this time around on Live from My Office, the guest is Tom Waddle. And yeah, we're going to talk football, but for those of you who may glaze over at sports talk, that's not what this is. This is Waddle and I. Yeah, we're talking about the National Football League, but we've always had a good rapport and a good chemistry going back to when we both worked at WGN. He's a pal, and I haven't seen him in a while. We got together earlier this summer at an event, and it's great to have him on. So he tells some great stories in this episode. I make him talk about himself, which he doesn't necessarily like to do, and he always tells the truth about the teams that folks in Chicago love, like the Bears, a team he knows best. So we'll get to all of that coming up. But before we jump into this episode fully, I wanted to take a minute and just remember Colin Powell. Colin Powell passed the other day. You know, we throw around the term great American way too readily and way too easily. But Colin Luther Powell was exactly that. He was quite ill in the end and died with COVID-related circumstances, but in no small part because of the fact that he was sick with other things. But what a life. What a life. A four-star general. He was the 65th United States Secretary of State, first African-American Secretary of State. He was the National Security Advisor, and he served as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during Gulf War. It was interesting, if you're old enough to remember that Norman Schwarzkopf would come in and do his swashbuckling daily updates about how we were kicking Iran's ass and Saddam's ass, and Colin Powell would come in and do his straight-laced, straight-faced military take on things and talk about the battle. So they were a good team in that regard. But anyway, throughout the years, Colin Powell did one thing better than most, and that's he served this country, and he served it well. I thank him for that service. And I certainly hope schools took some time to tell kids who Colin Powell is and was, because that's an important conversation to have, not just about being a first in so many ways as an African-American, but just being a great leader and a great unifier and someone who worked for presidents, both Republican and Democrat, and renounced his own Republican affiliation in his last few years of life because of just the dumpster fire that the Republican Party had turned into. I have great respect for the man. I wished I had had an opportunity to interview him more than once. And I'm just glad he was there because he did an awful lot for us. I thank him for his service. I feel for his family. It's not easy to say goodbye, no matter how much you might be expecting that somebody you love will be going. Colin Powell truly was a great American. On the flip side of that, once again, I don't know why I'm surprised, and I guess I'm not surprised, but the childish, bitter jealousy of former President Trump came out again. You'll remember he trashed John McCain in death. He did the same for Congressman John Dingell. And now he has done it to Colin Powell, where he wrote in his little red email chains, Wonderful to see Colin Powell, who made big mistakes on Iraq and famously so-called weapons of mass destruction, be treated in death so beautifully by the fake news media, Trump wrote through his Save America PAC statement. He continued, hope that happens to me someday. Well, if it's fake news, Mr. Trump, why would you care? Trump said Powell, was a classic rhino, if even that, always being the first to attack other Republicans. He made plenty of mistakes, and this is my favorite part. This is Trump and what a mental midget he is. He made plenty of mistakes, but anyway, may he rest in peace. It's just an embarrassment. And I do want to add one thing about that take on weapons of mass destruction, because I remember it well. And Democrats at the time were saying that George Bush, Dick Cheney, and Don Rumsfeld were some cabal of evil that somehow orchestrated a war that they wanted to pull off. At the same time, Democrats were readily calling George W. Bush an idiot in public. You can't have it both ways. You're either an evil genius or you're an idiot. And I believe that all parties involved, but most certainly Powell. There's certainly questions that Rumsfeld never answered in life, that Cheney may know, and that George W. Bush may know. But I don't believe that those men started a war and sacrificed American lives for personal gain or for their own legacy. I believe they also bought into the horrible intelligence that was used in the speech that Powell made, justifying our focus shifting from Afghanistan to Iraq after 9/11. Again, if you go back to where your head was and your heart was in 2004, it's not hard to figure why so many people got up for that, and we believed in the intelligence at the time. Colin Powell has owned the mistake he made in giving that speech, but he did it as his duty in the position he held because he was asked to do it. The intelligence was bad. It cost thousands of lives, and it is, as Powell said in his own words, a blot on his record. But his record stands as a great American. And let's all try to be a little less judgmental in the big picture and a little more caring. And remember the legacy of a guy who didn't care about Republicans and Democrats. He cared about America. With that said, we continue. And what I think you'll enjoy, a great conversation coming up next with former Chicago Bear and ESPN 1000 afternoon co-host Tom Waddle on the Waddle and Sylvie Show. My friend Tom Waddle is next. This is Live from my office. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance it when you're in, do what we all do. We call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Who are the we in we all? It's everybody I've worked with. It's my family. It's people who ask me for advice, and I tell them Team Hochberg is not only legit, they're the best in the business. That's not a recommendation you can get wrong, by the way. If you tell somebody, hey, you know that mortgage you're doing, the biggest financial transaction of your life, here's somebody you ought to use. And then they turn out to be, a shyster? Oh, you don't want a shyster. Then you are going to be on their blacklist forever. I have no problem recommending Team Hochberg. I have and I will. And after hearing thousands of Team Hochberg ads, Jody called for a free consultation. She's happy she did. Team Hochberg helped Dan and Jody secure a cash-out refinance, pay off most of their credit cards, and save over $2,700 a month. That's a lot of money. So before calling, Dan and Jody were overwhelmed and stressed out. After, David Hochberg eliminated over $70,000 of debt and saved them over $30,000 a year. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of my podcast listeners use their homes and their home's equity to eliminate debt. They helped Dan and Jody, but look, they can't help you if you don't call. And if you think, well, Steve, you didn't really talk about my issue. Anything involving the financing, the refinancing, the money in your home, well, you need to pick up the phone because Hochberg has an expert that can help, or he'll do it himself. All he wants to do is save you a little money, like Dan and Jody. Can't help you if you don't call. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com, 855-563-2843, or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. This is live from my office, and it's very good to say this. I haven't talked to this guy in a long time because he's been hiding from me. It's the great Tom Waddle. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Two things. I'm not great. I feel great, but I'm not great, and I haven't been hiding from you. So we're starting this off on the wrong foot, Steve. That is not accurate.
You know, I have to say, the short time we worked together at WGN, we were pals, and I was such a fan of how you beat up on our mutual friend David Kaplan every night.
Yeah.
You know, I'd get off the afternoon show, I'd be driving home and laughing as you pounded on him. And now you guys are working together. Cap does the morning show on ESPN Radio, and you and Sylvie have been doing the afternoon show forever. It's just funny how life turns, Tom.
Yeah, it is. Like, I mean, it all comes from a place of love, for sure. You know, we kid because we care. But look, in all seriousness, there's no one in the industry I have more respect for than Cap. He's a self-made guy. He was a basketball coach. You know, he created a basketball newsletter. He worked his way into, you know, the business and has had tremendous success over the course of a couple of decades. So we worked together for 10 years, I believe. And it was really when I was getting started in the business. I was doing radio and television work the last couple of years I was playing here in town. But then I think went to the old WMVP for a year or two, and then Dave Ennett gave me a call and said, "Hey, we'd like to have you come over and work with Cap." And we worked together for 10 years, and then scheduling and other issues came up in my life, and I had the opportunity to come over to ESPN 1000 and took that route, and several years later, Cap came over. So it really is a small world, and I do enjoy busting his balls for sure. Yeah,
well, and he earns it. And I love what you and Sylvie do, but what you and Cap had was special, and that was some great radio. So thanks for providing it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Of course, yeah, we enjoyed it. I mean, we had good times. We had a lot of fun. It was kind of odd because we were sandwiched between some serious people.
Not serious. Well, come on. You were sandwiched between me and Milt Rosenberg.
Well, okay. So we were sandwiched between you and a serious person, I guess. I was trying to be as gentle and correct as possible, but what we were doing was not important. What you were doing was important. And then, of course, what Milt was doing was important. So there was a stretch of 2 hours that was just jackassery.
Well, I like to think I provided a segue into your jackassery. And Milt...
Yeah, it's a good lead-in for sure.
Milt loved me because I always called him out and said he was a complete fraud and an actor, and he was the dumbest guy in the building. God bless him. All right.
Some of our most entertaining moments truly were
crosstalk.
When we would crosstalk with Milt at like 5 of 9.
Just the best.
And then my goal... Dave Ennett's going to cringe when he hears this, but I used to play basically a game. My goal was to get out of the parking lot before Andrea Darlitz started the news. So and it wasn't because I didn't appreciate my job and didn't take it serious, but I just had this I was looking for a void. I was looking to fill a void rather. From being an athlete or participating in athletics my entire life. And so you look for moments where you can compete. And my competition was with myself. If I could get through that damn gate before Andrea Darlitz started the 9 o'clock news, I would be like fist pump in the air on the way driving back to, trying to get to the highway. Yeah, I did it again.
The only other guy I saw to have a faster exit than you was Jonathan Brandmeier. And Brandmeier would run by the window. He'd be working upstairs on 7. This is after I came back in 2013. And he'd be working upstairs on 7 and doing, I can't remember if it was the FM thing or the digital thing at that point. But he would be outside the Showcase studio window waving as the news started, and he'd be out. So nothing thrilled me more than if he was delayed 30 seconds and the elevator would open and he'd be there, and I go, "Hey, Johnny, let's talk. I got new headphones. What do you think of these?" And I'd block the elevator so he couldn't get off. Totally freaked him out.
Yeah, well, when I would go downstairs, I consider myself fairly affable, but if you were talking to one of the security guards down on the dock, you couldn't get out before the news would start. So I'd just give him a quick wave. "Hey, how you doing? Have a great day. Have a great night. See you tomorrow." And I was obsessed with with this competition with myself to get the hell out of the parking garage or the parking lot before 9. I mean, it's an admission of being a total turd. I get it, but like,
no, the deal is it is show business, so the rules don't apply that everybody else has to live by. That's one of the advantages. But in your time slot there, and there's no reason to be there a minute afterwards. No. There's none.
I wanted to get home, and here's the kicker. We would start the show running down the hallway after playing video games.
Well, what was that? Wait, what was that baseball game you guys played in?
And we would play office ball, where we had a legitimate official, Louisville Slugger bat.
Yep.
And we taped up just a wad of paper, and this Cap and I would have these competitions, and like our show would be starting, and we'd be like, oh no, oh my God. We'd drop the bat and the ball or the video game controllers, and we'd run down the hall and welcome into Sports Central. Like, we were two of the biggest jackasses on the planet.
Am I remembering this right? Didn't you break a bunch of stuff in that office playing office ball?
Absolutely. I think Enid had to actually seek therapy for all of the stuff that we did wrong and that he had to cover for. But we're in one of the top 3 biggest radio stations in the business at the time, of course, without saying it.
Sure.
The two of us can't get on the air on time and can't get out of the building fast enough. I mean, it was fun.
Well, that's and that's precisely why you were successful. All right, I'm going to do something with you that'll make you uncomfortable, but we'll do it last. I want to talk about you. But before we get to the part where we talk about you, let's take a spin around the NFL. Buffalo loses last night. Yeah. I still feel like they may be the best team in the league. Did they show you anything last night that makes you think they're not?
No, I agree with you. I think what they looked at last night's game. You're on the road. You're 4-1. You feel good about yourself. Your defense is very good. You pitched 2 shutouts over the course of the first 6 weeks of the season. You struggled at times to stop Derrick Henry, who's a great player. But they looked at 4th and inches as, hey, we're going to, this is just who we are. We're going to go for it. And the Titans made a play. So they lose a tough ball game. They come out of Tennessee 4-2, but yeah, I don't have any. I don't feel, that they're a lesser team because of what happened last night. I think Josh Allen is a true difference-making top 5 quarterback in this league. As I said, their defense is good. They're very well coached with Sean McDermott. They can do a lot of really good things. So tough loss. I think the Titans are finding themselves a little bit. But, nothing I saw last night would keep me from suggesting that they are one of the best, if not the best teams in the AFC.
And Tennessee has a similar control over their division in the AFC South. Just doesn't look like Indianapolis or Houston, and certainly not Jacksonville will catch them. Boy, Vrabel's a good coach, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think that, I think he's good tactically. I think he's a guy that I think has a great control of his locker room. I think, the guys respond to him because he's very aggressive. He's been there and done that, so he has tremendous credibility. I think they've got a really good thing going in Tennessee. Now, look, they need to get over the hump once the postseason gets here. I like what they're doing in Nashville.
AFC West Chargers have surprised me. Vegas got off to a hot start. Obviously, the Gruden thing has created a hot mess there, so who knows where that goes. Denver's better than I thought, and Kansas City's not as good. So what do you do with that division?
I still think KC will end up at the end of the day being the best of the group. Their defense is a mess. And Patrick Mahomes has uncharacteristically played very loose and careless with the football. Now, he's always been a risk taker, but there was always a line I think that he would walk right up to but not cross in terms of doing some things that you wouldn't expect him to do on the field. So I think they'll clean some of that up. Their defense is what concerns me. I would, obviously, Buffalo went there and beat them a couple of weeks ago. I think before I would choose the Chiefs to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, I would need to see them improve quite a bit on the defensive side of the ball. I wouldn't count them out. Look, I don't think I think teams now more than ever pace themselves. And I don't think it's just because there's a 17th game. I just think that's the nature of the beast now in the NFL. I think that guys, who you are in the first month of the season is meaningless with regard to how it compares to who you are in the last month of the season. So I wouldn't write off the Chiefs in any way, shape, or form. I think the Chargers are a really interesting team. Like they got boat raced by the Ravens in Baltimore this weekend. But that kid, Justin Herbert, had a stinker of a game. It happens to even the best of them. But he's legit. He's the real deal. He's a difference maker as well. They got to clean up some things as well. But that's a good Chargers team. I think the Broncos will compete, but I don't think they have enough on offense. And the Raiders are just too up and down and not complete enough for me. I think you saw how distracted they were with what was swirling around that team and their coach when the Bears went to Vegas. They rallied last week, Sunday against the Broncos, but I wouldn't consider them a true contender.
Yeah, and it's a separate topic for a separate conversation, I suppose, and I'm sure you guys have hit it on Waddle and Sylvia on ESPN Radio, but there is a lot of talk like what Gruden was stupid enough to put down in emails, and it may not be the racist nonsense, the despicable racist nonsense that he wrote, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's some more ugliness that comes out. It just amazes me that people put that kind of stupidity in writing.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hope that that's the exception to the rule. I know it's not, but, to have that many awful thoughts is one thing, and then to put it on paper makes it, even more awful. Not to run away from that particular point, but the really odd thing to me, Steve, was that this was the result of an investigation into the Washington football team.
Yep.
Which, I get it. You don't absolve John Gruden for his ignorance and his perspective because he wasn't the focus of the original investigation. No, you can do both. I mean, you can condemn both. To think that was the result of an investigation that started with the Washington football team, and at the end of the day, the Washington football team and the inner workings of what was going on there and the sexual harassment allegations and all that was happening there, they basically walk away with nothing in terms of, hey, you know what, the NFL, we didn't find anything. And
right.
There are no more other unsavory emails attached to anybody else, so we're good. See you tomorrow. That's really more than weird to me. That doesn't compute.
No, it doesn't pass the smell test. And Daniel Snyder, who's been a sketchy owner at best, turning everything over to his wife so he wouldn't be forced to sell the team. Look, the NFL is the most entertaining sport in America. It is also, in some ways, the most collusional old boys sport in America. You put 32 billionaires together, you're going to have problems, I suppose.
Yeah. Look, what do they say? You don't want to know or see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, right.
I think that, that kind of applies. We are so enamored and thrilled with what we see every Sunday and Monday and Thursday night. It truly is, in my opinion, and obviously I'm biased because it's the sport I love, it's the greatest form of entertainment in the world of sports and I don't think it's even close. With all due respect to all the other sports, I don't think it's even close. So I think the NFL gets away with kind of brushing things out of the way or under the rug and just kind of keeping on. And it was just a really weird week that is hard to kind of connect dots, but
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy in the world.
No, neither am I, but we're on the list. In a North Baltimore, it looks like they could run away with it. Your Bengals are pretty good, and Cleveland maybe not so much, but it's a fun team to watch. And Pittsburgh looks like they got some game. That's a good division.
It is. It's competitive. I think there's no doubt the Ravens are the class of that division. What they did to the Chargers was unbelievable. They're well coached. They have been hit by the injury bug as hard as anybody early in the season. I think they've got 16 or 17 guys on injured reserve already, but they keep rolling. Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator, has done a fabulous job. Lamar Jackson continues to improve. He's a previous MVP that still receives criticism on a number of fronts, but keeps answering those critics with improving the way he plays in all aspects of his game. And He's in the MVP conversation again. It's very early again this year. I like what the Bengals are doing offensively. I think Joe Burrow I think the NFL, Steve, is in such good shape with regard to young, talented quarterbacks.
Yes,
Joe Burrow fits in that group. I don't think they're complete enough to really be a true contender this year. Pittsburgh's just, I mean, look, Ben Roethlisberger's had a great career. I don't think he's capable of doing some of the things now that he was able to do before, and I don't think that he'll be able to get them over the hump. And the Browns are dealing with injuries, and I thought that was the most impressive performance of the weekend was Arizona going to Cleveland and beating them convincingly. So it's a competitive division, but I think that the Ravens are the best of the bunch by far.
We'll get to the Bears, but let me jump to the NFC West since you brought up Arizona. I don't think anybody expected them to be 6-0, and I don't know that anybody knew this quarterback would be this good, but after last year, you had to expect they'd be contending, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they're exciting. My concern with him was two things: that he was still a little careless with the football. Kyler Murray, he's such a dynamic player, and because of his size and his fearlessness, that he would put himself in harm's way and wouldn't be able to get through an entire season. I think you saw his play tail off at the end of last year because he was dealing with a shoulder injury, which was the direct result of how fearlessly he plays the game. Boy, he is, and you expect this. He is in his third year. He's maturing as a player. He's learning when to take his shots and when to be more cautious and more conservative. He's got a ton of talent around him, and defensively they're playing well too. Yeah, he is a fabulous player. I hope he can stay healthy because he's good for the league. And they're a really interesting team. Nobody wants to see that group on a Sunday. Trust me. Ask the Browns, who kind of thought they were going to get right and make a statement of their own Sunday at home against the Cardinals. And the Cardinals came in and talked in the meaning of the word respect in all facets.
The Rams are really good. I don't know if that feels like that'll be a punch out, between the Rams and Arizona going the rest of the way. But man, Matthew Stafford, I honestly, I thought he was overrated at times in Detroit, but then he got hurt a lot. But along with the Rams pulling off this great quarterback heist and getting Stafford, they also have on the other side of the ball Aaron Donald, who could kill both of us with his bare hands. They look like they're going to be they look like they beat themselves more often than they lose.
Yeah, it's funny. I have this conversation with guys all the time about Stafford, and I've always been. I think the position is so hard to play that I think that guys like Stafford and even Kirk Cousins and others, I think Stafford's a better player than Cousins, but everyone dismisses Kirk Cousins because of this and because of that. But if you go deep into the statistical analysis of everything, I'm not going to tell you Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback, but Kirk Cousins isn't as bad as everybody wants you to think he is. And I think in some ways, Matthew Stafford has been painted with that same brush. Look, Matthew Stafford in Detroit never had a complimentary running game, never had a defense that consistently kept them in any games. It was basically Matthew Stafford having to chuck the ball 45 times a game just to make them competitive. And I think after a while, even talented quarterbacks, you develop some bad habits and some things. But through it all, I always felt that if you surrounded him, like most guys, there are very few quarterbacks in this league that can do it all by themselves. If you surrounded him with some better talent and you coached him up a little, that you'd see just how good he is. Well, I think Sean McVay, and there's another conversation point. I think Sean McVay did something that other coaches should look at and decide to follow suit. And that's when the coach no longer trusts the quarterback, you have to break. You can't continue to try to make it work.
Yep.
And he lost faith in Jared Goff. And so his decision was, you know what? Good guy, but I don't believe that he takes us to the next level consistently, despite the fact he did help take them to a Super Bowl. Once the coach has lost faith in the quarterback, that separation has to take place. So they made the change. And, you see what Matthew Stafford is capable of doing. I think Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are both, kind of under the microscope this year to see how good they are and see if that marriage works. But I think that's one of the interesting stories. That look, the Cardinals went to L.A. and put it on the Rams early in the season too. So, I thought when the season began, it was the best division in football. With Russell Wilson hurt, that's obviously going to, it's going to point the Seahawks in the wrong direction. And look, the 49ers can never keep a quarterback healthy, but they play good defense. I still believe it's the best division in the league.
There's no reason if Brady stays healthy and doesn't fall on ice and break a hip this winter, because he's old. See what I did there?
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
But Brady and Tampa Bay at 5-1, if he's healthy, there's no reason they can't go deep, and it doesn't look like anybody in that division will catch him, does it?
Not to me. I was just doing some work, preparing for Bears and Bucks this weekend. I mean, the stats through 6 weeks are crazy. They average 426 yards per game, 341 through the air. They're the number one passing team in the league in terms of yards per game. They're number 3 in overall yards per game, and they average 32.5 points per game, which is third for them. He's only been sacked 9 times, and he leads the league in pass attempts. So they know where their bread is buttered, and they take care of him. And defensively, they've got some issues in their secondary with guys not being healthy, but they're huge and they're good up front. So you can't run the football on them. I think this story is one that is amazing with Brady being as good as he is at the age he's at. I think that a lot of guys are going to be able to play later and into their late 30s and maybe a couple of them in their early 40s. I think the trend is going that direction, but I would just caution people, he's an anomaly. Like, not everybody's going to be able to play to 44, 45 at the level he's playing at. This is truly one of the great sports stories of all time.
I may be, completely off base on this, but a more technical question that goes to your wide receiver history. Does Brady throw a more catchable ball than most quarterbacks, and is that one of the reasons he's been so good for so long?
I think that's part of it. I think he definitely throws a very catchable ball. I think he's really smart. He knows where the ball needs to go. Ball comes out quickly. He doesn't hold it, so he doesn't expose him to any type of unnecessary punishment. But yeah, I mean, there are certain guys that throw long story short, it's a very catchable ball. I don't know if that's the reason why he's been so great. It's just part of the deal. It's part of his wizardry. It is funny though, because like I go back when you talk about a catchable pass, like there are so many funny things that resonate with me. And we had a guy, Will Fuhrer, who was a left-hander, came out of Virginia Tech, I think, threw the ball 1,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy, but he was a finger breaker because he'd throw that football 100 miles an hour. And the ball rotates differently from a lefty, and it would almost come in sideways. So there would be times that you almost have to catch the ball. You'd catch it, and you wouldn't catch the point of the ball. You'd catch the ends of the ball because of how it was traveling at you.
Sure.
And he broke them and dislocated more fingers, I think, than anybody I've ever seen.
That's what I'm talking about. You have to be able to vary speed, right? And there's some guys who just throw everything 100 miles an hour. And there's guys through history who have had success doing that, but Brady has the ability to throw a changeup when he needs to.
And you know what? He also he knows where to place the football, so he's not throwing you a medicine ball every 4 or 5 throws, which endears him to receivers for sure.
NFC East, Dallas looks great so far. They're always a mystery.
They'll run away. They'll run away with that. There's no competition in East.
But in Washington, your good friend and a pal of mine from the old days, Ron Rivera, is there a tougher guy than Ron Rivera? By the way, he's fighting cancer, and he's dealing with all this stuff that happened in Washington before he got there. He's a great coach. Is he going to be able to survive all this?
I think he will, because of all of the added value he brings for the reasons you mentioned. At the end of the day, you only hang around long enough, or for long enough if you win games. But I believe Ron Rivera was definitely the right guy for that team at that time. Great leader, really smart football guy. He's an excellent coach. At the end of the day, they're going to have to win games. But Ron was the perfect guy to step in there and provide the class and the leadership that was necessary at the time. I'm really surprised by their lack of defensive prowess this year. That was a group that I thought was going to be great on that side of the football, and this year they they really have struggled to stop people consistently.
Well, we can't put it off any longer. We go to the NFC North, home of yours and mine, the Chicago Bears. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know if Matt Nagy can coach or he can't coach. And I know you beat this to death every day. Again, a plug for Sylvia and Waddle afternoons on ESPN Radio. I don't think about the Vikings being a part of this. Detroit, they may have to actually give the franchise up if they get any worse. But if you can't beat Green Bay, you can't win.
Yeah, that's why some people were all chapped ass by Aaron Rodgers saying, "I own you." Well, he has.
Yeah, he does. It's a fact.
Speaking the truth. Look, I've got more angst and frustration directed at my own franchise than I do the Packers. Like, Packer Week brings the worst out of a lot of people. Oh, I hate the Packers. Okay, well, I get it. It's a rivalry. I don't hate my team. I'll never hate my team. But I'm more concerned with my guys than I am the Packers. I'm more frustrated that we can't consistently field a team that is competitive with them. That's where my angst is focused. And, like, you say it's hard, and I understand why you say I don't know who they are. Like, for me, I'm the opposite. I know exactly who they are. They're a team over the last 2+ years that beats up on the bad teams in the NFL and can't get over the hump against the good ones. If you go back and look at this team in 2019 and 2020 and even to start this year, they don't beat good teams. They beat bad teams. They've got a defense that I would go to bat with every Sunday. Are they perfect now? Are they as good as they were in 18? No. But right now, they're 7th in the league in yards per game and 8th in the league in points per game. Do they come up with a stop in crucial crunch time every time? No. Are they perfect? No. But they're not the problem. Like, we fielded calls yesterday from people. I swear to you that 50% of the people, the first criticism that came out of their mouths was about the defense. And I'm like, fellas, we average 246 yards per game. Yeah. We throw it for 117 yards per game, and we average 16 points per game. And this is who we've been for years. I mean, Matt came here to revolutionize our offense and develop quarterbacks. And what we've been since 2018 has been a group that ranks bottom 5 in pretty much every meaningful statistical category on offense. And that's who we are. That's who we've been.
It's one of the great mysteries of sports that one of the founding franchises of the National Football League since Sid Luckman has had maybe 2 viable winning NFL quarterbacks. It's one of those things when you get to heaven someday, you go, God, can you explain the Bears quarterback thing to me? Because that's very confusing. So we don't know what they're going to do.
Or maybe when we go the other direction, we'll get the true answer. maybe that's the only way to unlock this mystery is to go in the other direction.
Well, maybe Kaplan will call us and tell us what he found. So what you described is why you get an 8-8 or a 9-7 team, and while that may make a second wild card, that's never going to win a Super Bowl in our lifetime. So it's frustrating.
Amen.
All right, a couple of things that come off of this. Gambling in the NFL is not going anywhere but up. It's a huge deal. Can the NFL control it?
I don't think they really need to be honest with you. I don't think it's. I think it was inevitable. First of all, I think it's a part of fantasy football is comparable to actual gambling. Whether it's sanctioned by states or federally sanctioned, or the teams are more open to it, it's been going on forever. Now what you're doing is just creating a revenue stream by taxing it. So. Look, I don't think it's not a perfect situation, because you will find people like you do with the lottery and everything else that probably shouldn't be gambling. But, I don't think that's a league issue. I think that's an individual issue, and we can't be the stewards of everybody's life. So,
I agree with what you're saying. And I would also say that because it's so public, there's no hidden aspect to it.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of watchdogs on it, and the third-party entities that control it and basically just send the money truck to the NFL are being watched by everybody. So it doesn't bother me. I mean, it didn't.
Yeah. You know what, Steve? It's like look, again, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but which is strange because I'm the only guy in this room right now. But that's a story for another time. But I think you know what? Shed light on it. Make it as transparent as possible. and find a way to help people by doing it. And you can do that. But we saw a stat yesterday that last month, the state of New Jersey, there was over $1 billion in sports wagering.
Wow. That's last month.
Last month, which again, there are benefits to it because there is taxable, there's tax revenue that can be appropriated in other areas. So, like, if it's going to happen, instead of having it behind closed doors, why not shed as much light and much transparency on it as humanly possible and try to make something good out of something that was perceived to be bad for years?
Let's do the uncomfortable thing to end this and talk about you, because I've never known anybody, this is a compliment. I know you don't like compliments, but you and Steve Kerr are the two most normal athletes, professional athletes I've ever met. And
unfortunately, I've got 0 rings and he's got like 12, but that's it.
He would tell you right place, right time.
Yeah, that's good.
But here's the thing, to go back in history a little bit. You come in 89, 91, 92. Yep. You're the best receiver on the Bears, one of the best in the league. John Madden loves you. The league loves you. TV loves you. Wani comes in and decides you're not fast enough. Am I remembering that right?
No, you are, and I wasn't fast enough, but go ahead.
Well, but the point I'm trying to make here is I don't know that would play out if you were Tom Waddle 2021 at that same age, because talent seems to win. We got a lot of guys who I think fit your profile, other than the suicide missions you went on so often, and the rules were different then. But in the league today, I don't think there's a coach who would have considered giving you up.
That's an interesting point. Look, I don't know that I could translate. I think the game is so much faster and guys are bigger, faster, stronger. It's such a more athletic game. I hope I would have been able to find a way to carve out a spot. But look, I ran a 4.79 and a 4.81 40-yard dash at the Indianapolis Combine in 1988. I mean, I was the slowest receiver there. I was quick. I could move side to side, and I had this innate, complete obliviousness to people kicking my ass on Sunday, so it didn't bother me. But like what I did was kind of it was a niche business. Like, you see slot guys, like I just watching the Buffalo Titans game. Cole Beasley's a guy that real small guy, plays in the slot. His athletic ability is off the charts. Like, if you go to Julian Edelman,
but these are the guys. These are the guys I'm thinking of. They're not going to outrun a sprinter.
No,
and they don't think they hit you took. But I think there's a spot. So anyway, thanks, Wani. You ruined the last couple of years of Waddle for me. Yeah. But how hurt were you when you decided to quit? I
mean, the truth is at that time I left and went to Cincinnati.
Right.
As a quote-unquote free agent in 1995. With the benefit of hindsight, when the realization happened quickly for me, I was kind of done physically. I think I hung on for another year despite having hip problems and a knee problem, and my shoulders were all banged up, and I didn't fit Wani's system, and like I was probably bitter and mad at Wani going back in time. I've come to really like Wani, and I think he does a nice job on the pregame shows and his coverage of teams. And I really like Dave now. I think he's a really good guy.
He is a good guy. You're right.
Yeah, he is. But when you're immersed in the situation, I was resentful, and I left via free agency because I thought they weren't honest with me with regard to what they were planning on doing. Like, they told me that they wanted me to come back as their third down receiver. I was no longer going to be, asked to do things that physically I couldn't do, but there was still a spot for me. And at the same time, they had already made an offer to Michael Timpson to bring him in and basically take over for me. So I just felt like, look, I wasn't the greatest player in this franchise history. It wasn't even close, but I gave you all that I had, and I was loyal to you. And it's, people ask me what it was like to play for Mike Ditka. I say it was great for me because Mike demanded two things: honesty and loyalty. If you gave it to him, you would receive it in return. And that's kind of like how I felt. And so I thought kind of that bond was violated a little bit. Maybe that was just me being overly sensitive, but I went to Cincinnati and I just couldn't run, man. I remember being first practice, my knee swelled, and I was going home. Like, the player personnel guy with the Cincinnati Bengals was my former defensive coordinator at high school at Moeller.
Oh, wow.
And this was me a chance to go home and finish my career in the city I grew up in. And I quickly realized that I had nothing left physically. And I made one mini camp and I retired, and my hip I was walking out of the building limping, and my knee was swollen and my hip was bothering me. And at that point, I realized I was mentally, physically, and emotionally cashed, and probably as much mentally and emotionally cashed as I was physically. And I didn't want to do it any longer. I didn't want to kind of lie to myself and think that I could do something with this. I remember David Shula, who was the head coach. He goes, "Well, why don't you think about it? You don't have to give us an answer now. Go home, kind of collect yourself." And I said, "Coach, I'm not going to do that to you. And I'm not going to do it to me. I know I don't have anything left. So thank you for the opportunity." I didn't get a signing bonus. I signed for $178,000 as an unrestricted free agent.
Wow.
Back at the time, which was league minimum.
Wow.
And I just, I said thank you and left and called it a career.
When I think about coaches and management being less than honest with you, I think, what a smart segue into show business, because, man, managers are so honest.
It's funny. People ask me, and obviously my run in this industry has been significantly longer than my run
and a great run
in the sports world. Thank you for saying that. That's nice of you. There's two things about this industry that really resonate with me. One is, for me personally, it was the closest thing to ever competing.
Yep.
Like, there is absolutely zero way to recreate the adrenaline rush and the feeling of pride that you get when you come out from underneath the goalpost at Soldier Field and they announce you as a starting wide receiver in the National Football League. Like, that gives me chills even thinking about it. It was a dream I had as a kid growing up in Cincinnati, and one that I thought there was very, very little to no chance that I would ever recognize and realize. To suggest there's a way to recreate that adrenaline rush there's nothing. But to be able to do a 4-hour radio show or to be on national television and the light goes on and you have to have something meaningful to say, that's the closest thing I've ever experienced to the privilege that I had for 6 years playing in the NFL. So it provided me that performance type of outlet that I don't think I would have gotten if I'd gone to Wall Street and put that Boston College finance degree to work.
Yeah, but your dad would have quit asking, at least at that point.
Exactly. What the hell are you doing with yourself? And the other thing is that if you think that the world of sports is a cruel and competitive and snarky environment, wait till you get a taste of the radio and television and broadcast industry, because you know this better than anybody. There's only a finite number of jobs, and there's an infinite number of people that want them, which means everybody's looking to take your spot.
Yeah, including your, in quotes, friends. But you're right. You do. I get what you're saying, because you do have the competition. You do have the absolute necessity to perform, or they'll show you the door. But again, I don't think I've ever plugged anybody 4 times during the interview, but I really enjoy Waddle and Sylvie. And if you're not listening to ESPN Radio in the afternoon, you love sports, you should. How did you get through what you went through without major concussion syndrome? And how often are you checked? Are you keeping an eye on it? I mean, you're frankly, you're more clear-eyed than you were when I worked with you.
It's funny. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I have moments. It just depends the number of moments a month. I mean, I have a couple moments a month, and it's hard to distinguish whether or not those moments where I don't have a ton of clarity, or I just feel off, or I struggle to remember names or things, or I go back to the refrigerator a third time for the same item. I don't know if that's because I did get hit in the head quite a bit throughout the course of playing at the high school and then the collegiate and then the NFL level, or it's being 54 years old, or it's a combination of both.
Yeah, that's probably the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dwell on it. I don't stress about it, but it does It does sit with me at times. Look, I mean, I've played with and against guys that aren't with us anymore, tragically. Dave Duerson, I was a teammate of Dave's for a couple of years. Dave's not with us anymore. I played against Andre Waters. He's not with us anymore. I mean, there's a lot of guys whose, the brain trauma created things in their lives that they weren't able to overcome. I think if you sat in your house and you worried about it all day long, you'd never leave your house.
Yeah, of course.
So I recognize those moments that it's not all computing. I try to minimize them the best I can, or remove myself from situations where I need to be more clear thinking, which is hard at times, because if you're on the air 4 hours a day, you need to be as on as possible. But so I guess long story short, I know I've had issues in the past. I know I'll probably have more going forward, but right now I feel blessed that I have 10 times more good days than bad days. And I'm thankful for today, and I don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah, well said. When you walked into that Bears locker room in '89, 4 years removed from a Super Bowl, 3, I guess technically, but all those legends still around, you were a very successful, accomplished high school and college athlete.
Yeah.
And a very confident guy, even though you're one of the more self-deprecating guys I know. But walking into that locker room had to be crazy, right?
I peed myself. I mean, literally.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Like, okay, here's first mini camp. Like, first of all, I'm driving in. I got a Mercury Lynx and the grills in the back seat with Ohio license plates because, like, I'd wrecked it, and that's all I had.
And you're living on big money.
Exactly. I got $4,000 to sign as a free agent, undrafted free agent in '89. I'm riding high, but I remember parking the cars far away from everybody else's cars as humanly possible. I walked into the building, and I still remember going down the stairways for our first team meeting. And I swear to you, this is not a lie. I almost tripped William Perry and almost made him do a header down the steps. And I'm like, oh my God, we got 80 guys here. I'm number 80. I was,
you killed the fridge.
Almost. So it didn't happen. He kind of collected himself. I collected myself. I wanted to run, but we get into the meeting room, and I swear to you, Steve, there's Steve McMichael, there's Dan Hampton, there's Richard Dent, there's Jay Hilgenberg, there's Jim McMahon, there's Dave Duerson, there's Sean Gale, there's Keith Van Horn. Like, I could go on forever. And I was sitting in the back in a chair, and I'm like, I had to pinch myself. I'm like, I have died and gone to football heaven. This is like, I can't believe what's going on here. And you kind of, it's almost like you're hovering above yourself, looking at the room, and it's an out-of-body experience. And you think, oh my God, it can never get better than this. And then the door swings open, and in walks Ditka. And you're like, oh, hell, it's really getting real now.
Right.
Like the Pope walked into the room. So, I mean, to this day, like, my memory sucks, but I remember that first mini camp meeting like it was yesterday. And I remember Mike yelling at all of us, like, we got work to do, and there's 80 of you, and not all of you are going to be here when we kick the season off. And I don't care if I got to keep 53 kickers or punters. I'm keeping 53 guys that want to be here and be Bears. And then I remember going out to practice. I'm all, rah, I'm ready to roll. I could, run through a brick wall. And I walked upstairs and began a 3-day stretch in minicamp of holding a blocking dummy for 3 days. Like, I didn't get a single rep.
Welcome to the NFL.
Yeah, like, it was like I was elevated and then completely deflated like you've never seen. But I'll never forget. I mean, the journey was really weird from that point forward, but I'll never forget that meeting. It's one of the most remarkable things of my life.
And speaking of guys who still appear to be clear-eyed, at least the majority of the time, Hamp is like that as well. And you think about him getting hit on every single snap. It's pretty remarkable. You mentioned Mongo. God bless him in a horrible struggle he's in. But we just want to remind people he just had a birthday. And if you were so inclined, we just hope you'll say a prayer for him and his family, because he's going through something none of us would want.
Steve, I would tell you that I loved all my teammates, and I had such respect for all of them, including Hamp. Steve McMichael, I believe, is the most underrated football player in the history of the Chicago Bears.
Wow.
Now, some would yell and scream, "Well, how can he be? He's been on a number of lists." Listen, Steve McMichael had greater than 100 sacks, or right at 100 sacks in the National Football League.
That in itself is crazy.
He was a marvelous football player, and he intimidated the hell out of me. You will never meet a nicer, more affable, more inclusive guy than Steve McMichael. And he's in the battle of his life for his life and the battle of a lifetime. I can't say enough about that guy and the character that he possesses. And yeah, if you've got time, certainly think about him and say a prayer for one of the greatest that's ever played the game.
Yeah, and so many people have visited Mongo, and I do have to know, I'm not a wrestling guy, but I thought it was very sweet that Ric Flair, people may not remember that Mongo wrestled, but that Ric Flair paid a visit to him to check on his buddy, and there's a lot of reaching out, and the most masculine, manly of sports, just to see guys, how much they're touched. And were touched by Mongo and what he's going through, and they continue to do it. But anyway, please say a prayer for him. Before I let you go, I have to ask you one last thing about a mutual friend of ours who now is a drifter, and you might see him on a corner saying, "Will Sportscast for food." Our guy, Mark Giangreco. He is.
You won't see him grifting. Trust me.
He is. We had a great night not that long ago, which essentially was a roast of Giangreco.
Yeah.
And he is one of the great people that I've ever come across in this business. There's nobody that could deliver 4 minutes of sports and make it as entertaining. It felt like an hour-long variety show. He was the best there was. I don't know if he's ever going to do TV again, but I didn't know if you wanted to say something about Giangreco.
I love Mark as talented, and this is a cliche I know we all get caught up in when we talk about how good somebody is at their profession. Mark Giangreco is the best I've ever seen do his job. Ever. The most talented guy, the guy that could connect with an audience better than anybody in the world. Mark Giangreco is an even better human being. Mark would give you the shirt off of his back. He would come to your, to your side if you needed help for anything. He's one of the most inclusive people I've ever met in my entire life. He's going to be a lifelong friend. I appreciate him and the time I got to work with him at Channel 7 and when he would join us on ESPN 1000. I hope we have an opportunity to cross paths professionally again. He and I have been friends for a long time and will be friends forever.
Same goes for me, my friend, and same for you and I. And it's good to reconnect. I hope we can do this again or get on the golf course, at least in 2022. But my best to your family, and thanks for all the entertainment, and stay healthy. It's the great Tom Waddle. I don't care if you don't think you're great. You are great.
I'm not great, Steve, but it's great to be with you, and all the best to you and your family as well.
If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, you need to do what I did. I called Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender who's always going to look out for your financial best interest. Your credit score is the number one factor that determines your interest rate. The difference between a 699 and a 740 score on a $250,000 mortgage will cost you an additional $25,000 in mortgage payments over that 30-year fixed loan. You heard me. An additional $25,000 that you'll never see. It's just gone in payments over the life of your mortgage unless you get that credit rating up. And to enhance your credit and to secure a lower rate, pay off or pay down your credit cards every Friday and get added as an authorized user on the credit card of someone with great credit. These are the tips and tricks that Hochberg knows. They're all legal, and this is the kind of time he can save you because he's doing the thinking for you. Team Hochberg helped me and my family and thousands of my podcast listeners enhance their credit to secure the lowest rate before purchasing a new home or refinancing their existing home. But they can't help if they don't have you on the other end of the phone. Pick up the phone and call or jump online. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Your part's easy. They'll do the heavy lifting. 855-563-2843 or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender. NMLS number 1124061. Before we go and I do my roundup of thank yous, the charity that we want to mention now is something that was brought up to me by Tom Waddle, one he supports, and certainly ESPN supports. It's the V Foundation. The V Foundation continues just amazing work in fighting cancer. And Coach Jim Valvano's words are brought up every year with that incredible speech he gave at the ESPYs about his own battle of his life, that he would eventually succumb to cancer, but his legacy lives on day after day, year after year, and the fight against cancer and the research dollars that are contributed. If you donate to the V Foundation, you can know that you can rest comfortably that your dollars are going to the cause and not in some administrative will, because some very generous donors have paid for all the administrative costs that go on at the V Foundation so the money can go to research. It's a simple website. It's www.v.org. That's the letter V.org to contribute to the V Foundation. Thank you again for listening. Wherever you listen to Live from My Office, please subscribe and download it for somebody who struggles with the high technology of this wacky world of podcasts. Thank you to Ross Cochran, the executive producer. He puts it all together in fine fashion again. And, give his podcast, his real daily job, a check sometime. You can find it on Spotify and all the other podcast sites as well. Just search Ross Cochran. It'll come up because it's got a big word in it that I don't really feel like spelling at this time. Thank you, Ross, for all of that. And thank you for listening. My name is Steve Cochran. You likely know who you are, and we'll see you next time on Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.